He was a black aerospace engineer, brilliant, resilient, and far too familiar with being the only voice of dissent in rooms he led. He knew the stares, the whispers, the questions no one said aloud. But that day, in a rain-drenched airport, he was the only one who stepped forward to help a woman in a wheelchair. He didn't know she was the heir to a billion-dollar tech empire, a woman carrying both a quiet rage and a secret powerful enough to bring down her entire family. The terminal at Lagos International Airport buzzed with frustrated travelers, their movements laced with the tension of delays. Outside the tall windows, rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the runways into endless stretches of glistening black. Every sound, the wheels of his carry-on, the clipped announcements over the PA system echoed inside Dominic Hayes like a drumbeat he couldn't slow. He glanced at the board above Gate B-17, Flight 623 to London, delayed again due to weather conditions. The overhead lights hummed softly as he made his way to the far end of the waiting area, scanning for a spot with fewer people and a power outlet. That's when he saw her. A white woman in a tailored blazer sat near the window, her wheelchair parked carefully between two mismatched chairs. Her posture was upright, chin lifted, but her eyes gave her away. Cold, sharp, watching everything yet closed off. "Need a hand?" he asked, stopping beside her. His voice was level, firm. The woman looked up, clearly not expecting anyone to speak to her directly. A pause stretched between them, tense, curious. Then she nodded, expression unreadable. "The right wheel keeps catching," she muttered. "This floor hates me." Dominic knelt, fingers brushing cold metal, inspecting the wheel as he spoke. "Looks like the axle's misaligned. It might be jammed with debris." "You're an engineer?" she asked. "Kind of. Aerospace. I fix satellites, not chairs, but mechanics are mechanics." She tilted her head, eyebrows lifting. "Smart and efficient?" "I try," he said, standing and brushing off his hands. "Push forward while I steady it." The moment passed in a shared rhythm, her strength, his direction. The chair shifted, straightened. She let out a breath she'd been holding. "Thanks," she said, offering a hand. Natalie Winters." Dominic hesitated, then took it. Dominic Hayes. There was a flicker in her eyes when he said his name, just a beat too long, then it was gone. She gestured to the empty chair beside her. "You look like you could use a break, too." The view from the window was a blur of rain and runway lights, hazy and surreal. For a moment, they didn't speak. Then she glanced at the silver chain around his neck, the pendant resting against his collarbone. "That's an unusual piece," she said slowly. "Looks old." "It was a gift," he said, his tone making it clear he wouldn't elaborate. Still, she pressed gently. "From someone important." Dominic turned his head, meeting her eyes. They were blue, steady, too steady, the kind of gaze that looked for weaknesses. "Yes," he said, "but she's gone." Natalie nodded once, then looked away. Silence fell again, but it wasn't empty. It thrummed with questions neither dared to ask. From the corner of his eye, Dominic noticed a woman across the hall glance at him, then again. Her eyes lingered on his skin, his posture, his clothes. She wasn't subtle. He'd seen the look before, doubt mixed with something uglier, as if his presence here, his confidence, demanded an explanation. Natalie caught the look, too. "That woman has a problem," she muttered, barely moving her lips. Dominic didn't respond. He was used to it. "Ignore it," he said. "I do, but you shouldn't have to." The simplicity of the statement caught him off guard. He gave a short nod, then opened his laptop. A few seconds later, a browser window loaded, revealing a 3D render of his prototype satellite system. Natalie leaned slightly closer. "That's yours?" "Built it from scratch," he said. My firm's pitching it to a panel tomorrow. If they fund it, we can expand into climate monitoring and disaster response. She stared at the screen, then at him. You built that, and you're sitting in a terminal like this? He smirked. The world doesn't hand out respect just because you're competent, especially not to men like me. Natalie was quiet. The weight of his words hung in the air, sharp and true. Would you mind if I asked what men like me means to you? She said. Dominic closed the laptop with a soft click. It means I walk into rooms where people assume I'm the assistant, not the creator. It means security pulls me aside more than others. It means I've learned to keep my voice even and my back straight because one misstep becomes a stereotype. Natalie didn't interrupt, didn't blink. When he stopped speaking, she said quietly, "That's not right." "No," he agreed, "but it's real." Outside, a gust of wind battered the glass. A loudspeaker crackled over. Had another delay. Natalie looked at the storm, then at him. "If you ever need an investor, someone who doesn't underestimate you, I know people." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "And why would you help me?" Her gaze didn't waver. Maybe because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it. Something in her voice had shifted, like a door halfway open. He couldn't see inside yet, but he sensed it, grief or guilt, or maybe both. Dominic stood, appreciated, but said, "I don't need saving." "I didn't say you did." They held each other's gaze for a second too long. Then he nodded and walked off toward the vending machines. Natalie stayed behind, watching the silver pendant glint once under the fluorescent lights. It was Victoria's. She would have known it anywhere, but she said nothing, not yet. The wind howled through the glass like a wounded animal, rattling against the panes as if trying to claw its way inside. Rain kept falling fast and thick now, turning the airport outside into a waterlogged void. Dominic returned to his seat with a lukewarm bottle of water and the hollow certainty that Natalie Winters knew more than she'd let on. There had been something in the way her eyes locked onto his necklace, recognition, pain. He didn't miss details like that, not anymore. Survival had taught him to read people fast. "You didn't ask who gave me the necklace," he said quietly. Natalie didn't move. "I figured you didn't want to talk about it." "I don't," he replied, "but you already know." Now she looked at him. Her jaw flexed once before she answered. "It belonged to Victoria. Victoria Winters, my sister." There it was. He'd known it was coming, and still, it hit like a punch to the chest. The words closed the space between them with the force of a revelation too heavy to carry alone. "I didn't know she had a sister," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor inside him. "You're not the only one she kept things from." Natalie's tone was sharp, bitter. "We had different fathers, same mother. She kept our lives compartmentalized." Dominic nodded slowly. "That sounds like her." For a moment, they both looked away, each wrestling with ghosts of a woman who had mastered the art of distance. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and let the words fall. "We met 4 years ago at a fundraiser for aerospace education. I was there with my team. She was magnetic, smart, reserved. But when she focused on something, on someone, she was all in." Natalie gave a faint, bitter laugh. "Yeah, that sounds like Victoria too." Dominic didn't smile. "We were together for 3 years. She never mentioned you, not once." Natalie didn't answer right away. Then she said, "She probably thought she was protecting you." "From what?" "From us. From all of it." Pause. Then she added, "Victoria didn't trust our family, not since Isaiah took over." The name twisted in Dominic's chest. "The CEO?" Natalie nodded. "Our mother died when I was 17. Isaiah married her late. She left the company to him, not to Victoria and not to me. He's smart, powerful, and dangerous when cornered." Dominic swallowed hard. Victoria had said very little about her past. She kept it neat, clean, detached. I only realized something was wrong when she started withdrawing. She wouldn't tell me why, just said it was safer that way. Natalie's hands tightened on the armrests of her chair. The year before she died, she told me she'd found something. She didn't say what, just that it was big. She said Isaiah was hiding things, contracts, payments, people. I thought she was being paranoid. Next thing I know, she's dead. Dominic turned his head sharply. What did they say happened? Accidental overdose, Natalie replied. But she never used, not once, and she hated pills. He felt something cold slide into his stomach. I was told it was a heart attack, sudden, no autopsy. They cremated her within 2 days. I didn't even get to say goodbye. Natalie's expression hardened. That sounds like Isaiah's doing. Quick, quiet, controlled. Everything inside Dominic tightened, old grief twisting into new suspicion. He looked down at the necklace resting against his chest. He hadn't taken it off since the day he got the call. It was the last thing she'd given him, the last thing that made sense. Natalie's voice softened. She loved you. You should know that. He didn't answer. Love meant trust, and Victoria had hidden too much. A loud clang echoed from across the terminal, an unattended cart tipping over. Dominic flinched instinctively, his heart racing. When he turned, he caught a man near the corner of the lounge watching them. He turned away too quickly, pulling a phone to his ear. You know what this looks like? He said under his breath. Like someone's watching. Natalie leaned closer, her voice a whisper. You think Isaiah sent someone? I don't know, but if Victoria left behind what I think she did, someone doesn't want you finding it. His fingers brushed the chain at his neck. The pendant was simple, but he'd always thought it felt heavier than it should. Suddenly, the screen above flickered. Final call for Flight 623 to London. The moment broke. We should, Natalie said. Dominic nodded, but his mind wasn't on the plane. It was on the chain around his neck, on the weight that might not just be symbolic anymore. 3 weeks later, Dominic stood in the middle of a broadcast studio surrounded by lights that burned too bright and microphones that caught every breath. The digital countdown above the camera read 2 minutes until the interview went live. Across from him sat Thomas Reed, lead anchor for the Guardian's international stream, poised, precise, eyes sharp as a scalpel. The kind of journalist who didn't just report the truth, he hunted it. You sure you want to do this live? Thomas asked, adjusting his earpiece. I'm sure, Dominic said, his voice low but steady. Natalie sat just off camera, arms crossed. She hadn't said much all morning, but her presence was grounding. Her assistant, Leah, was upstairs coordinating the legal team. Dominic's brother, Tyler, was in another room with the federal agents delivering backup evidence to the Department of Justice. The director counted down. 5, 4, 3. The screen blinked to life. Thomas turned toward the camera. Good evening. Tonight we bring you a story of corruption, cover-up, and courage. Our guest is aerospace engineer Dominic Hayes, who along with his team has uncovered a massive illegal surveillance operation buried inside government defense contracts. The camera shifted to Dominic. For a second, the weight of it all pressed on his chest, the lights, the eyes, the ghosts. Then he inhaled slow and deep and spoke. My name is Dominic Hayes, and I'm here to tell the truth. He met the camera's gaze, steady, focused. He told them everything about Victoria, about Project Raven, about Isaiah Winters and the way he turned surveillance into profit and patriotism into a shield. He explained how his mentor was framed, how Victoria was murdered, and how Natalie was nearly killed for asking the wrong questions. Later that evening, They gathered on a small rooftop cafe overlooking the London skyline. The wind was crisp but not cold, the kind of air that woke you up rather than made you retreat. String lights hung low, warm and humming. Dominic sat at a round table with Natalie beside him, her assistant across from them, and Tyler leaning against the balcony rail, watching the skyline flicker. Glasses clinked softly. Laughter came slowly, like a muscle remembering how to move. After a pause, Natalie turned to Dominic. "You could take this further, you know. A foundation, a reform bill, hell, a seat in Parliament." He smiled, a rare kind that reached his eyes. "One step at a time." She nodded. "So, what's the first one?" He looked out at the city, then down at his hand, at the silver chain still wrapped around his fingers. The pendant glinted faintly in the light. "I want to build something that can't be buried," he said. "Not just for me, for others like my mentor, for Victoria, for people who don't get second chances." Natalie leaned forward. "You're thinking a nonprofit?" "I'm thinking a movement," Dominic said. "Public infrastructure, privacy rights, government accountability, tech that serves people, not profits." Tyler turned around. "You'll need allies." "I already have them," he said, looking at each of them in turn. "And I'm not building this alone." The wind brushed past them, carrying the promise of something beginning, not ending. Natalie watched him closely. "You believe it's possible?" "I believe silence ends the moment one person decides to speak." She smiled, slow and honest. "Then I'm with you." They stayed there long after the sun fell, long after the waitstaff began clearing dishes and yawning politely. No one rushed, no one needed to. When they finally rose to leave, Dominic lingered at the edge of the rooftop. Below, headlights crawled like veins through the city. He could almost see the roads he hadn't walked yet, the fights still ahead, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid of them. He turned to Natalie. "Walk with me." She nodded. "Always." They moved slowly through the evening, his hand lightly resting on her shoulder, her wheels gliding beside him. There were no walls between them anymore, no compartments, just truth carried like a banner rather than a burden. He had faced down systems, shadows, and silence, and won not because he was louder, but because he refused to be quiet.